Adrienne Ann Breitfelder, City Clerk, you are hereby directed to call a special session of the City Council to be held on Tuesday, March 7th, 2023, at 6:30 p.m. in the Historic Federal Building for the purpose of conducting public hearings on certain fiscal year 2024 department budgets.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to a special session of the Dubuque City Council for March 7th, 2023. As a reminder to our participants, you can provide in-person input or virtual audio and written input during tonight's public hearings. Input options during the live meeting include: in-person attendees may approach the podium when the mayor asks if there is any public input for the public hearing they would like to speak to. Remote attendees can log into GoToMeeting using the login links, phone numbers, and access code that appear on the broadcast and live stream and posted on the front page of the meeting agenda. This option includes audio input and written chat input. If you are participating via computer, indicate which public hearing you would like to speak to in the chat function, or note that you would like to speak during the appropriate section. If you are participating via phone, indicate which public hearing you would like to speak to during the appropriate section. All comments, whether in person or virtual, must be accompanied by a name and address. Additionally, written public input is accepted by contacting the City Council directly from the city's webpage at www.cityofdubuque.org/councilcontacts and through the City Clerk's office email at ctyclerk@cityofdubuque.org. This information will be reiterated during the meeting. Attendance for the session is as follows: Mayor Kavanaugh.
Here.
Council members Farber.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Resnick.
Here.
Roussel.
Here.
Sprank.
Here.
Wethel.
Here.
And City Manager Van Milligan.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Kavanaugh, I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Adrienne. So our first budget hearing tonight is the Housing and Community Development Department. And we have, I think, the whole department. No, we've got a great turnout from the department here tonight. So thank you very much for coming. And Alexis, I'll turn it right over to you.
Wonderful. Alexis Steger, Housing and Community Development Director. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. We have quite the presentation tonight. One of the best you'll see. Challenge all the other department managers to do better. So we're going to present tonight, and I have brought all of our division managers, and they're going to take over and talk about their divisions so that you don't have to listen to me all night. So I will quick overall for the housing department. Our mission statement has not changed. We are still working to provide neighborhood groups, nonprofits, and residents affordable housing, safe housing, and we strive to make it a more viable and safe and affordable community as a whole. We do a lot of work in our equitable community of choice. In our department, we actually have 5 equity teams, and all of our employees must participate in one of those, and their focus is on recruitment, retention, community outreach, many other things, and so we continue that. We also do training on equity once a quarter with our full department to make sure that we are always putting our best foot forward for our residents and able to serve those with the best education and equity that we can provide. Our department is quite large. We have quite a few divisions, and so they're shown here. We have 36 full-time equivalent employees currently. We do have a proposed change to that with a 0.25 addition. We are looking to eliminate the part-time ADA inspector position and instead have a full-time combination inspector. That is a net cost increase of about $35,000 in the fiscal year 24 budget. A couple of our highlights from this last year, we did implement a new housing choice voucher software, which is much more robust and has a lot more reporting for us, which we are actually in love with. It also allows residents to get right online and see where they're at on the wait list, and landlords where their payment's at. So we're really enjoying that software. We also started contractor meetings. So those contractor meetings there's an education component, but also to make sure that we're hearing the concerns about contractors and how things are going on their side. So there's a component of just socializing with the contractors, make sure they get to see our inspectors. So we have another one coming up in April. And then we did get the Healthy Homes Production Grant in this last fiscal year, which is a $2 million grant we'll talk more about later. Some of our future initiatives that we'll be looking for either right at the end of this fiscal year or into fiscal year 24. We are going to be looking to implement a new software for permitting, licensing, and plan review. We're also working on the build out of the secondary responder model with our partners. and we will be working towards the adoption of the 2021 International Building Codes. So the housing department as a whole, when you look at our property tax support, we cost the average homeowner about $11.50 a year. And I am going to turn it over to Assistant Director Mike Belmont.
Hello, Mike Belmont, the Assistant Housing Director. As Alexis stated, one of our mission statements is to provide safe and affordable housing. And one way we do that is to rehab dilapidated structures and resell them. There's a list of properties on the board here. We do partner with the HEART program, and they partner with NICC and the Dubuque Community Schools to provide real-world classroom learning for their students to learn construction trades. We feel this is a pretty valuable tool for the development of new contractors and tradesmen. In this list of properties, one of the interesting ones up there is 1448 Jackson. The layout of that particular site lends itself well to an idea, a concept that we're looking at to provide a fully wheelchair-accessible single-story structure as an affordable home in Dubuque. We also partner with ANI to do a lot of the rehab programs that we have. We have 612 Lincoln. We're working on relaying that property to them to do a rehab project with. Another way we do that is first-time home buyers. We provide assistance up to $25,000 with zero-interest loans. We also have housing incentives. As you can see, with our partner agreement with ANI is $30,000 per unit, 5 units a year for 5 years. If you look at what's on the slide here, that funding there's about $2.675 million worth of funding there, but that's funded with housing tax increment financing. A couple of notable projects, affordable housing projects that came on board this year that were completed. We have 94 units between 2 projects that were brought on board and opened this year, or in 2022, I should say. 44 units, senior housing at Roosevelt West, and 50 units at Gardens of Dubuque. The proximity of those is great. It's next to a school, or next to a couple schools, I should say, Carver Elementary and Roosevelt Middle School. Just a reminder that the council did adopt some new housing incentives in 2022, and that has done its intended job. We have a lot of interest in new affordable housing. A lot of projects are showing interest in developing in Dubuque. A couple of notable projects that we have, Fox Hills Apartments should start construction here late spring. That is 390 total units, which is 13 30-unit apartment buildings plus a clubhouse. The first 90 of those received a $1 million Iowa Economic Development Authority grant for $1 million for affordable workforce housing, affordable workforce housing. Another project is Merge Stacks Building, which has taken a little while to get off the ground, but I think we've gained a lot of momentum recently, and I think they should be ready to go for construction that's located down by the Diamond Joe Casino. That's 192 units. The reason I mention these particular units is that's a lot of units, and what that should do is to help relieve the rental challenges that we have in some other locations. In 2022, there were no successful LIHTC projects. However, I did note that some CDBG funding was approved for the acquisition of the Henry Stout Apartments for affordable senior housing. So the point is that just because one funding source doesn't work for somebody, that there are oftentimes other opportunities. Moving on to the Inspection and Construction Services Division of the Housing Department. That division deals mostly with permitting, construction, new and rehab, and also rental licensing and fees. Ben Potoff will come up and talk about the rental licensing and fees, but on this slide, there are a couple of significant construction projects that are completing or recently completed, and those are the Mount Carmel Bluffs Senior Housing Community Phase 2, which was a $90 million project, and the $14 million Clower Manufacturing Expansion. And this is just a couple of many projects that we are working with. For new residential homes, in 2022, the number of new single-family homes was up, 51, over 40 for the last 2 years. And we anticipate that that growth will continue, and the next slide will delve into that a little bit. We've had several new and newly expanded subdivisions that we should have, between all of them, we should have approximately 350 lots available for construction by the end of 2023. That is a significant number, and I think that that's going to drive that new single-family home number up quite a bit. The next slide is just the surrounding community, 5-year average. Dubuque, our average is still, people wanted to build in Dubuque. We're still at the highest number here on the list. I will note in this slide that Asbury, Dyersville, and Piasta all decreased last year in their number of new single-family homes, while Dubuque increased. The unincorporated Dubuque County and Grant County, those are large geographical areas, so we expect those numbers to be fairly high. This is the number of permits that the department issued in 2022. It was up pretty sharply after COVID. So the department staff and inspectors and permit staff have all been working very hard to keep up with those numbers. The chart that you see on the left, that is a projected number for fiscal year 2023. The green portion is the actual number through May 1st. The blue number is carried over from 2022. And the little bit of orange on top there, that is growth that we have seen in the first 2 months of the year. There's been a sharp uptick in permits in January and February, and should that growth continue, we'll end up at 4,700 permits at the end of the fiscal year. If that doesn't happen, we still anticipate we'll be 4,500 or so, which is well within our expected number. I do want to point out that in this slide, these numbers in 2022 amounted to $128 million worth of construction value in Dubuque, and that's just the construction portion of the value. We expect that to be about 60% of the total value of projects. So that amounts to a significant investment in our community. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ben Potoff.
Thank you, Mike. Ben Potoff, Deputy Code Official with the City of Dubuque. I'm happy to be here to report that fiscal year 22 was a very good year for the Rental Licensing and Inspections Division. We've still got about 1,300 property owners owning and operating rental property in the City of Dubuque. Right in the neighborhood, or actually we just crossed over the 11,000 mark in terms of units available for rent in the city. The other good thing that happened in fiscal year 22 is we hit our targeted 5-year inspection cycle for the first time, which allowed us to slow down our pace of inspections just incrementally. So we inspected 2,253 units, and our target is 2,260. So we're right on track with hitting and maintaining that cycle moving forward. Another good note, we didn't have to make any adjustments to our inspection or licensing fees. We continue to be above our threshold of 90% self-supporting with our current fee schedule. This chart shows the required rental inspections for the City of Dubuque and our pass and fail rates. So when we get a license application, we'll perform an inspection upon application, and then we do it about every 5 years thereafter. You can see in 2018, we recognized between our fail rate and our no-show rate, or unable to get into a unit, we were up over 90% that were failing. We saw that as a problem, and we implemented a fee change that incentivized getting us in and passing your inspections in fiscal year 20. You can see that had a pretty marked impact in fiscal year 20, and then has continued to have a good impact on our inspections. We're down to not getting in on only 2.6% of our inspections, and we're up to passing over 17.6%. So pretty significant improvement in that way. If we wrap in our housing choice voucher or assisted housing inspections, our fail rate actually drops down to 70%. So we're passing almost 30% of the units, and are unable to gain access for inspections is under 2%, which is fantastic. So people are showing up, they're getting their inspections done, they're making an effort to pass. Even if they don't pass, the inspection reports are shorter, and so we're seeing a significant improvement in the quality of housing that we're going into inspect, so that's great news. With the assisted housing program, we do inspections at the move-in of a new tenant, and then about every 2 years, well, it is every 2 years thereafter. And so good progress on all those areas. The next slide shows the priority category designation. So we've got 7 landlords currently in that designation. You can see the number of units that they owned at the time, owned or managed at the time of their designation, totals over 823 collectively. With the additional pressure that this ordinance applies, those owners often reduce their catalog of properties or what they're responsible for managing. You can see on this slide it shows they've reduced collectively down to 201 units. One large property owner of note, Jesse McIntyre, sold some pretty huge complexes, so that's a big portion of that. But we're seeing great success with that increased pressure, and we've had a couple of property owners that are getting close to moving on to the next step and getting themselves out of that intensive inspection program. Another thing we do with our team is vacant and abandoned building licensing and inspections. We require vacant or abandoned properties to have a license of, let's see, in 22 we licensed 67 properties. We had 19 under enforcement that were not licensed, so the ones we recognize as vacant and or abandoned, but they haven't cooperated or got their licenses yet. And then we had 9 properties that entered in petition for title cases or that were working through that process. So of the 19, some of those will likely end up in that petition for title process where the city will take ownership. The photos in this slide show one particular property we just recently took ownership of down on Bluff Street. And you can see just how bad that one has gotten. Unfortunately, many of the ones we take title to are not in a condition that's able to be rehabbed. But of the ones that are, Mike kind of referenced some of those earlier, that we'll often work with program partners or with our housing rehabilitation programs to get those back in order and back in use. With the vacant building licensing, we require quarterly exterior inspections, just keeping an eye on the property in whole to make sure that it's staying secure and picked up and mowed and all the things that you would expect a property with any attention to get. And then we also do one interior inspection to check and make sure that the building shell is intact, that they're not getting moisture damage or things that could lead to a property looking like these photos. And then these photos are a great example of a success with that. We were able to petition for title to this property on Iowa Street. I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago we took title to that, and they're just nearing completion now with those being renovated, and they'll be sold for affordable housing. They're going to be single-family, 4 attached single-family units. And with that, I'll turn it over to Gina Hudson.
Good evening. Gina Hodgson, Assisted Housing Supervisor. We'll just talk about our program here. So our goal for the Assisted Housing Program is to provide safe, healthy, and affordable housing. This is achieved through many avenues, but really HUD's federal funding, property owner participation, our inspections division, enforcement, and the community resources and referrals for all the nonprofits in the area. So with our vouchers, we have many different types, and over to the right, you can see we have the Housing Choice Voucher, which is 1,021. We have the non-elderly disabled vouchers, the project-based vouchers, the VA supportive housing vouchers, and the Family Unification Program. And under the main Housing Choice Voucher, we also have a home ownership program, and that is where a participant can use their voucher to pay their mortgage instead of their rent. And so it's trying to get more people into homes. And we have other supportive programs within our department that can help with that, and you'll hear more about that later from Maddie. So the community impact that the Housing Choice Voucher has is it's increasing housing stability for people. We provide rental assistance for about 760 households every month, and that economic impact is $6.5 million in rent payments, and then 1.5 million of that is paid actually by the participants. So federal money, but also participants have some skin in the game too. And the picture there is just of the Rose of Dubuque, where we have our current PBV contract. We have some barriers to full utilization of the vouchers. So HUD's budget calculation and HUD's model is really whatever funds you don't use, you lose. And so that's a challenge. That coupled with the policies surrounding some of the different vouchers, specifically the poured out vouchers, gives us a challenge. And when someone wants to leave the community with their voucher, they can, and we pay for them to move somewhere else, and we pay the that rent until that different community decides to take on their payments. We call it absorb them. Well, when they absorb them, then they start paying for them and we lose them. The biggest problem is that a lot of times when they leave our community, we're paying 2 times, sometimes 3 times the amount we would pay for somebody to live here. We're paying 2 to 3 times for them to live somewhere else. And so when they absorb them, we have to lease up 2 to 3 people to make up for that one voucher that we lost. And so since HUD takes that glimpse in time, that 1 year, if we lose them at a certain time of the year, it takes us time to get that many vouchers back up, and that's how our funding kind of falls off. All of that coupled with low vacancy rental rates in the city and even lower landlord participation within the city is providing this challenge that we're underutilized, and we're underutilizing our funds. And so efforts in '24 are really going to be to continue the landlord outreach to try to increase participation, to also assist any way we can with all the new developments coming online, with all the stuff coming up here, and then concentrating our waitlist efforts to maximize lease-up success. And with that, I'm going to hand it to Mary Bridget.
Good evening. I'm Mary Bridget Korkendeutsch. I am the Community Development Specialist. I'm here tonight to talk about our Community Development Block Grant allocations. You might be hearing it referenced as CDBG too, so we'll use that acronym. You can see here on this slide, these are our previous fiscal year allocations. Tonight, obviously, we're really going to talk about that FY24. We do want to take a minute tonight to recognize our Community Development Advisory Commission. We have a full commission right now, which is wonderful. Our commission does a lot to guide the work of our CDBG dollars in our community. So they do a lot to everything from reviewing applications that come through, reviewing and approving our annual action plans, reviewing and approving our end of the year reports. Again, they just do a lot to guide where our dollars end up in our community. And so we want to take a minute to recognize them and thank them for their service. And then like I spoke about before, we're really here talking about the FY24 annual action plan. So that entitlement dollar that you see there is slightly lower than what's in your budget documents. That's because we just received our actual allocation from HUD a couple weeks ago, and that was after we had already submitted our budget documents. But it's not that much difference, as you can tell there. And then I also want to point out our program income. So our program income, we get those dollars from loans or from sales of homes that we have through our CDBG programs. It's used exactly like the entitlement dollars. So we can use them as any activity to really total our total resources of that 1,304,674. So that's what we're looking for this year from our FY24 annual action plan. And we've got a variety of activities that are supported in our annual action plan. One of them that we wanted to highlight tonight is that Lincoln Outdoor Wellness Project. There's a few pictures that are listed that are shown there on this slide. That project is really going to be a great asset for that community, those kids and families that live in that neighborhood. So we're excited to see it unfold. With that, it's a good segue to turn it over to Maddie. She's helping me with that project, and she has more programs she'll be able to talk to you about tonight. Thank you, guys.
Hello, good evening. I'm Maddie Hamerland, Urban Development and Housing Rehabilitation Project Manager. I'm going to talk to you about our Community Development Division. As Mary Bridget mentioned, one of the things that I do is help manage the bigger capital CDBG projects. And along with that, I also work with our first-time homebuyers. So we give loans out in the amounts of anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000, depending on the location in the community and the income level of the individual applying for the loans. There's 0% interest, and payment amounts are $40 to $60, depending again on income level. So it's really a great program. As you can see here in fiscal year 22, we had 12 participants, and 6 of them were female heads of household. I don't want to ruin next year's budget presentation for you, but we might double that number. We've had a great year so far. The housing market has stayed hot and steady for us. We have not had a slow time yet for first-time homebuyers. So currently to date in fiscal year 23, we've either assisted or are pending for 16 first-time homebuyers. We have another 7 in queue. 9 of those are female head of household. We've already closed on 2 housing choice voucher first-time home buyers, and we have another 2 in queue. So we're really excited, making a lot of progress there. Our team is working really hard because these are kind of high-pressure situations. They take priority when we get a first-time home buyer through the door. And so for fiscal year 23 to date, we've committed $250,000 towards incentives for first-time home buyers. It's really exciting to see the investment in our community and people, getting a chance to have a wealth-building asset that can benefit their families to come. We also have homeowner rehabilitation loans. They work similarly to the first-time home buyer loan, so they're 0% interest. Again, $40 to $60 payment, or due on sale, depending again on income level. So one of the things that we focus on is making sure that after we've come in and done our rehabilitation work, and given, with the loan, that all code violations are addressed, so we're leaving people with a completely code compliant house. There are certain things that we look at to make sure that, if this water heater is 15 years old, but it still works, we'd rather just take care of it and include it in our scope of work so that you're not coming back in 5 more years needing another loan for a water heater when we could have addressed it at the time. We also have loans for accessibility and just general remodeling. So we took a brief hiatus on this program. We had to put it on hold while new staff got up to speed on what's going on. But we now have about 6 people that we are getting ready to close on with their loans for homeowner rehabilitation, and it's wonderful to see the impact that it makes in their lives and how exciting it is for them to see these improvements happening in their houses. And the last thing I'm going to touch on is our partnerships. And so Mike Belmont talked a little bit about this, and you'll hear Nicole talk about some of the same partners when she's up here chatting with you tonight. But the first one I want to mention is the Affordable Housing Network. We work a lot with them through the TIF dollars and through other funding sources, CDBG as well. The pictures that you have here on screen are of 1293 Walnut Street. And so the picture on the left is when we took it, when we got it through petition for title of property, and it was in pretty rough shape. And so we transferred that property to Ani, and this is the result here on the right. And we had help from Felicia to make a beautiful promotional video about our partnership with this. So if you have time to look it up, please do. I didn't think I was going to be on camera, so don't judge me, please. But but it's a beautiful house, and we really had a great product with that. And Ani's been just enormously wonderful partner to work with. We also work with the Four Mounds Heart program. As you saw, they have a couple projects underway at 821 Garfield and 514 Angela. We anticipate that those will be done by the end of this calendar year. And so they do fantastic work, and the job coaches and leaders of those teams are just incredibly passionate about what they do, and you can see the excitement of the participants with those as well. And then the last thing I'll mention is that these homes that are being rehabbed are sold at affordable prices, and it's a requirement that low-mod income folks have a shot at purchasing these homes. And coupled with our incentives, oftentimes on a house like this, they're getting a bank loan of maybe $115,000 to buy a house like this in an established neighborhood, brand new, nothing to worry about, those types of things. So very cool stuff. And now I'll pass it on to Angela.
Hi, I'm Angela Ventris, Grants Project Manager. I specifically manage the lead and healthy homes grants that we have. Our current grant runs from 2021 through May of 2025, and that is a $4.2 million grant with the intent to make 106 units lead safe. So we focus on lead paint that is in our old homes. Specifically, we focus on homes built before 1978 when lead paint was outlawed in private residences. And for our grant, there are some income guidelines that homeowners must meet, and we do also allow landlords to go through the program as well, and we actually income qualify the tenants. We prioritize homes with kids under 6, as that is who is most at risk for lead poisoning. So far, for the whole time that we have ever had a lead grant, which goes back to around 1997, we've made 1,115 homes lead safe, and there's just under 26,000 pre-1978 homes in Dubuque. So we are looking forward to doing more. We are also wrapping up an 18 grant that we received an extension for. So we're currently doing dual grants, which is exciting because we just have more money to focus on more properties in the area. And I did provide a couple photos. The top two photos are a before, and it's pretty dark in here, so I apologize if you can't see it very well. But this home had a lead-poisoned child, and the homeowner was pretty overwhelmed and worried about what to do. And through working with our program, they were able to not only have new hard surface flooring installed in their home, but new windows throughout. And also, we're able to work with our partners at the Visiting Nurse Association to manage the lead-poisoned child, work with them to reduce the amount of lead that was in the child's blood, and also find other services throughout the community that could help to make sure that their home is healthy and safe.
I'm Nicole Lytle, Grants Program Manager for the Healthy Homes Production Grant. We received this grant in February of 2022. It is a $2 million grant, and our goal is to get around 100 housing units safer and healthier for these families. There's actually 28 health risks that we walk through when we go through the inspections with the homes. Some of the major items that we've been addressing as of late is radon. We have been finding almost 75% to 80% of the homes that we go in and inspect do have a high radon level, so we have been installing a lot of radon mitigation systems. We've also been addressing moisture intrusion and trip and falling hazards both inside and outside of the home. We also work with the VNA, just like Angela does with the lead program, to help make sure that we're able to provide enough resources to the families to make sure that they can consider or continue to make their homes safer. I am also the Grants Program Manager for the Older Adults Home Modification Program. This is a $1 million grant that we received in December of 2021. It's a 36-month grant, and our goal is to make 180 homes safer for those so they can age in it longer. This grant does require our participants to be over the age of 62. And some major items that we've been doing is installing tub cutouts, grab bars, and addressing tripping hazards as well. We have partnerships with Unified Therapy. They go in with their occupational therapist to complete the home assessment and help us determine the work that should be completed. And then we work with Four Mounds as well to help on the construction side with their job training programs.
All right, to wrap up our housing department budget, just want to go through some of the logistics. We have capital projects. You've already heard a lot about them because they're through our CDBG programs or our grant programs. So a couple I just want to touch on here. The permits, plans, and rental licensing software is a capital improvement project that is new for the fiscal year 24 you wouldn't see before. And then we also have on this slide the Housing Trust Fund. You don't hear a lot about our Housing Trust Fund. It's mostly for first-time homebuyers in the Washington neighborhood. So it is part of those down payment assistance that Maddie was talking about. We also, this year, are looking to partner with one of our nonprofits to do an infill, at least one infill lot with that funding source. So that would be the first time we've used that funding source to do something like that. So a little unique, again, this year. A couple performance measures just to point out, there's a lot in your budget document, but I wanted to highlight the one, the number of homeowners through the first-time homebuyer program. Maddie didn't really talk about exactly how important that is. We're seeing so many new first-time homebuyers that are low income, and that is the biggest wealth-building asset you can ever get, and that helps people get out of generational poverty. So that is one that we are extremely excited is moving in the right direction, and we're getting a lot of partnerships with banks who are actually referring them to us. So we've forged those relationships, and it's really working. So we're really seeing that program take off. And then a couple things I wanted to point out is the home ownership in our voucher participants. They did talk about that a little bit. That's been a stagnant number for years. And now we have a family self-sufficiency coordinator, Lemaitre Murdoch, who's amazing and has been referring and getting families ready with their credit and all of the other things to actually get into homes. So that program's starting to take off. 4 new participants in 1 year is going to be a significant increase, and we're looking for that to continue. And then I want to point out the number of landlords participating in the Housing Choice Voucher Program. We did release our rental licenses in January, and we have about 71% of those back in reporting, and we are not seeing that number change at all. We had about 33% last year that were accepting vouchers. With the 71% reporting, we're seeing about 32.6% that are accepting vouchers. So we're really just not seeing any change in that number. One other thing I really want to point out, I brought staff tonight, but there's many other staff behind them that are amazing at achieving so many things. We have people that are needed to be certified, but they over-certify, and then they go out and volunteer on top of it. They're part of the Boy Scouts troops, the Girl Scout troops, volunteer boards. They're doing emotional intelligence work. They're doing work outside of their normal jobs to make sure our community's whole. And what I mean by that is they will pick a block and blitz that block, meaning they will go out and pick up trash. They go back and talk to all the neighbors, make sure that everybody's okay with how things are going, clean it up, what's going on in the neighborhood. Walks of solidarity, and we all, that was on Juneteenth, making sure we get together and team build so that we're one big group, one big team coming together. We also make sure that we are, when we need each other, we're there for each other, but we're also there for our community. We're team building with the community members, and I mean that with departments as well, all different department heads, because we will face things such as staffing shortages. So it's hard to clean up parks, and guess what? We can all come together and team build and make sure that our community has a park that looks amazing and not have any of those issues. Or when we have days that we have to do street outreach and we are doing hoarding situations, things that we just don't face every day, we have a team that is ready to address those in unique ways. They come to the table and have each other's backs during fires, catastrophes, and then they can come back to the office and our residents get to see their smiling faces still because we have each other's back. So we do a ton of that work, and there's lots of people behind that. So this budget's not just numbers, it's also all the people. And that's all we have for you tonight.
I don't know, Alexis. That's giving the other departments a run for their money right there. That was a pretty good presentation. So before we do anything else, we are in a public hearing for the Housing and Community Development Fiscal Year 2024 budget. Do we have any public input this evening? I see no one here. Do we have any virtual input?
No online comments.
Okay.
And no written input received.
All right. Thank you. Then I'll bring it back to the table for any discussion.
Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Russell first, and then I'll go to Mr. Resnick.
Well, first, thank you. And I had written down, wow, great job, team. I was just so impressed by everyone. I really like the new contractor meetings. I think that's a great idea. I really enjoyed seeing so many people from the department. Thank you for doing that. It's amazing of the work that you've accomplished, but I did have one question. I think it's for Ben. You talked about the vacant property licenses, and whoever is appropriate to answer this question, I'm wondering if there's something that we could or should be doing to get those properties sooner. You mentioned that sometimes by the time we get to them, they're in very great disrepair. So just wondered if you had thoughts on that.
Alexis Steyer, Housing Community Development Director. Actually, Ben probably has a lot of really good thoughts on that. But what happens is we actually get stuck a lot in court. So you can't just go and take someone's property, and it's not that easy. We want to make sure they have the ability to be informed, the ability to take care of that property, to keep that asset if at all possible. So that's our first goal. Our other goal is to make sure the neighborhood doesn't suffer from a vacant building and that the asset doesn't decrease. So part of that process is making sure we're making the connections. A lot of people don't live in town if they've abandoned one of the properties. And then when we do, there's a 45-day wait period when we do actually apply to the court, and then you have to, once that wait period's over, you have to apply to the court to get an actual trial date. Then you have to have the trial, then you have to get the judgment. So, I mean, you're talking a 6 month to a year, sometimes a year and a half before you can get through that process. And then there's an appeal right, and if they show up at that point in an appeal, it just causes a cascading effect. The one that Ben showed out on Bluff Street, we've been approaching that property for over 20 years. So we've been in courts for that one for over 20 years, and you can imagine being vacant in that condition, how bad that got.
That's very helpful, thank you.
Mr. Resnick.
Thank you. And so many great things happening, so congratulations. I have a specific question, but I do think it's for Ms. Larson. And maybe you could help me understand. I'm trying to understand how .75 to full-time is $35,000 extra. So that would mean that that position pays $140,000. And I'm trying to, is that all salary? Does that include benefits? And then maybe if you could tell me, either one of you, in general, what is the salary to benefits? When I'm looking at something that says this part-time inspector to full-time, so a full-time combination inspector is going to cost the citizens $140,000, or you also make money. So it's not actually all coming out of property taxes, but it's $140,000. Is it like $100,000 of that is salary and $40,000 is benefits? And can you generalize this so I don't ask this question 20 times about what is our salary benefit combination percentage? I looked on page 33, and we have two inspectors that get about $80,000 per at OE 17. And then GE 34, that person is making $86,000. And that's probably straight salary, right? And so I'm just curious about the $140,000 if we were taking for .75, and if .25 equals $35,000 extra, then that's a $140,000 position.
I'll take the first part and then let Jenny do the generalization for you. So the ADA inspector is actually not the same pay class as a combination inspector. One is more certified. A combination inspector needs to be certified in all of the categories, and an ADA inspector is not, especially a part-time ADA inspector. They're actually closer to what we consider an inspector one. So the OE 17 that you see are inspector ones. Those are rental license inspectors. And then those that are GE 34s are our inspector twos. They're the ones that go out and do the permitting of like new builds or changes to your home. A combination inspector needs to be able to cover more than one trade, and they also do plan review, so they get paid at one salary higher, so you'll see them at a GE 35. So to jump from an ADA inspector to a combination inspector, the salary grades different. You're not one for one on those grades. So it wouldn't be 140 in this specific example, but so she can tell you benefits versus salary. So the GE 34s are about 85. You'll see about a $3,000 to $4,000 increase to jump to a GE 34 is the 85. You'll see about a $3,000 or $4,000 increase to get to the combination inspector at a GE 35. So the salary would be about $92,000 to $93,000 of the full package for a person, and then benefits will be for Jenny.
Good evening, Jennifer Larson, Chief Financial Officer. So benefits would include health insurance for 24. It's budgeted at $13,424 per position, per full-time position. Life insurance is $46 per full-time position. IPERS is 9.44%. Of whatever the base wage is, and then the Social Security would be 7.65%. And then if the person qualifies for longevity, you would add on whatever percent longevity that person would be. It's anywhere between 1 and 5 or higher if it's police and fire.
So is there a rule of thumb or not, really? So this person who's making $92,000 salary, you would think that maybe with 10% extra, and then for IPERS and those different things, we could say it is, add a certain amount more, let's say it's $120,000, or how do you, is there a way to generalize for all employees to say it's about 25% higher, you take your salary plus 25%, and it's about what it's costing us? You can't do that, or you can?
I don't think you can generalize it for all employees, especially if they're long-term employees because of the longevity factor, but I could look at it for, I guess, more recent hires as far as what it would be for health, IPERS. And of course, it also differs for police and fire. They have MFPRSI, which is a much higher percentage, so they're in the 26% range for contribution for their police and fire retirement.
Great. Thank you very much. It's a tricky job you have putting this all together. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Just to follow up quick, though, it is standardized, though, across the entire workforce within the city, correct? I mean, for the most, now, with caveats that you mentioned, I mean, there's
Yes.
different requirements for different departments, but it's standardized within each of those departments.
Yes, so,
There's no fuzzy or funny math.
no. So, those police and fire who, are in MFPRSI, qualify for that retirement, and then other employees qualify for IPERS, yes.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Farber.
So Alexis, I have a couple of questions, and one is I want to give a shout out to Ben and his team, as I have experienced, I think, 2 or 3 inspections this year, and I think we actually had a quote-unquote listed as failure because we had to come back and correct a few things, and it was just a pleasure to hear and to see that team work, because they are very efficient and proficient, and a lot of learning, at least on my part, as to what the code is for whether it's a house or an apartment. So I greatly appreciated that. Tied into that, you had mentioned, a 30% rate of landlords, or those of us that are landlords, that are applied to help you with the voucher system. Is there anything that you guys are thinking about, any marketing campaign, anything that we can do as landlords to help spread the word or extend the interest? And I know that there is shortage of apartments, and that sometimes it's very tight even to move a tenant. They kind of stay for a while, and therefore there's not anything available. But with the new housing that's coming aboard, is there some way to kind of boost the participation from your perspective, or from your team's perspective?
Yeah. What HUD is recommending, so we've done videos, marketing, outreach. We send with the rental licenses information about how to participate. What HUD is actually offering now is some type of, it's like a landlord outreach between landlords. So landlords that accept with landlords that don't, or that are new. So we also, in our successful property management class, and I got that wrong, which everybody has to go through as a property manager. We are also promoting it through that, but HUD says, also bring in some seasoned landlords that have accepted and get their experiences. So that's something that we'll be looking at this year. COVID did prevent a little bit of that as they kicked that off, but we are looking at maybe that's successful. They haven't said it's successful, but that's what they'd like us to try next.
Yeah, I just think hopefully we can step that up a little bit. I'm surprised that it's that low, to be quite honest. And then another question on historic preservation and the fact that we're buying some of these very distressed properties, but it takes an enormous time to actually close on that purchase. In the interim, when it's identified as a challenged property, are we able to communicate with Heritage Works or some of the other investors in the city that like to buy distressed properties and put their skill sets together on the rehab for historic preservation?
Yeah, and we do reach out when we have one that we know for sure looks like it's something we could save. If it's not too far gone, this one that we'd been working on for 20 years, it was very, very far gone. But ones that we see on the horizon, we've got one right now in our possession at 945 Bluff. Any of those that are going to have that historic nature, we do reach out to Dwayne Haggerty. We've had a couple investors that are interested, and then they also reach out to him because he helps get the historic tax credits. So that is a partnership that we have forged, and also we partner with the planning department. And so the planning department has all of the the commission, and connections as well, through Chris Olson. So those partnerships we keep pretty close.
Okay, well, thank you for that, and thank you for your whole team for being here. It's just quite quite fun to see all your faces and to see the fact that you guys do enjoy each other's company and play nicely together. So thank you very much for all that you do.
Other side of the table. Good? Okay. I have a few, if it's okay. Yeah, don't walk too far there. So, first of all, let me just sing praises for a second. I heard a couple of things that I haven't had the chance to hear in sitting at this table for a couple of years. Inspections. We're having success. We're seeing the numbers move up. This was a huge issue for a few years, and we were really concerned about it. A lot of people were. It's great to see that. The first-time homebuyer numbers, those are incredible. I mean, that's great. We're really moving in a great direction on that. So it was really wonderful to see that. Also, thank you very much to everyone for the presentations. They really were very helpful and informative. Question number one, I was thinking about this on the way in as I was thinking about this material for today, in that I hadn't been hearing much from some of the housing advocacy groups here in town. I'm hoping they still feel free to call me if they need to, but I'm taking the fact that I'm not hearing from them as a pretty good thing. It seems to me that we are moving in a direction where, the numbers for the units owned by landlords who are on the list that, they've had challenging properties have dropped dramatically. I mean, that's a dramatic drop. So are we seeing improvements with all this going on? How is the relationship with the housing advocacy groups here in town? Are we seeing that they're happy with the direction that we're going as a housing and community development department?
Yeah, and we continue to meet with them. So we still have our monthly meetings with the Friends of Fair Housing. We still meet with the Dubuque Area Landlords Association. We have heard again from the Renters Union, which kind of died down for a little bit, but we've heard that they have some advocacy coming to Dubuque that wasn't here previously. And we love to encourage that because, we can't be eyes everywhere. And so we have that same thing. I hope they feel free to call us because we want to know, and how can we help? And we feel the same way. They are not bringing specific properties to us anymore. It used to be we'd have those meetings and they'd have a list of properties they wanted answers about. So we're getting that same feeling, but we are not going to stop those connections because you never know when that might turn. You never know what they might find, and that's a good thing for us as a city.
That's fantastic. Thank you. That's really good news. Another question. We had some mixing together with our building and code. Advisory and Appeals Board? I can't even read my own handwriting here. Sorry. And that changed. We changed that structure. How's that going? Is it going pretty well? Are we meeting on a regular basis? Is it working?
We are meeting on a regular basis because we've had a few cases that they've had to hear. I would say we need more participation. It is a tough board to fill. You need the trades to have to get the seat, so you have to have the credentials. A lot of our builders are from outside the city. They just actually live right outside the city, even though maybe their business is in the city, and so they don't qualify for those seats. So we do struggle to keep those seats filled and to have enough, but we have been able to hold meetings, and we have been able to hold those hearings. We'd love to have more. We're hoping those contractor meetings are going to help kind of fill those slots.
Great. That's helpful. Thank you. Last question here. Well, actually, no. Sorry, two more. Is there any chance of changing? This is going to be a crazy question. Is there any chance of changing the way HUD works? I mean, so, and I mean this with all respect, honestly, to housing and urban development. It's an incredibly important department in the federal government. We partner with them in a way that is incredibly important and useful, and I really do have deep respect for the work that they do. I know it's challenging. I know the department, as a department, it's just massive, and it just kept on growing. And it seems to me that at times it struggles to make sure that everybody knows what's happening within that department itself. But, the FAA goes through a regulation process. We got the Farm Bill up this year in the federal government. Does anything like that happen with HUD? Is there a chance where we can advocate at specific points in time that would be more useful than others? And I say this just because I thought of it in the middle of your presentation, and I don't know the answer to it, so I'm wondering if there's a time for that.
And Terry Goodman's actually a really good one to kind of advocate for the right timing. But we have seen a change at the head of HUD, and so whenever there's a change in leadership, and we've got a couple retirements right under, he's got 4 regional directors, or she. So when that changes over is usually the opportune time to start saying, hey, can you take a look at a couple things? So we might have some in soon, but HUD, they're unpredictable, and so who knows if that's really the case. The focus in DC is going to be really important, I think, this year. And Terry's going to guide a little bit of that and hope that council can help in that realm with HUD. HUD is a lot like a city in that all of those departments are different divisions and headed by different people. They don't work like the city of Dubuque, where we all talk to each other and like each other and will actually work together. They work opposite of that and often will release something and then the other one says, don't do that. So we don't know how to fix that yet, but we will. The moment we see any advocacy or any national organization say, now's the time, we're going to pass that on to make sure that we're advocating at the same time.
That's very helpful, because I think those moments are important, and I think we have, opportunities as elected officials to talk to other elected officials and people who are key in that process to do that. So thank you. Last question. Sorry, I'm going on a little bit long, but we've been doing a lot of stuff with housing and different things. Are we on the right track at this point? I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, for the last few years. Are we kind of getting where we need to go? Are there other things that we really need to be paying attention to other than what you mentioned here?
I actually feel as if we're at a point that we're hitting all the right spots. We're doing all the right things. Our outcomes that we're given every year, we're able to start moving those needles. Then we get to talk about them now. And that took a couple years and a lot of heartache from the people behind me, because we changed programs, we changed lots of things. Because they weren't working and they weren't meeting the outcomes, and those changes are being seen. And so as a department, we get a little bit of chance to take a step and say, okay, good, we're hitting those outcomes, we have the right programs, now we can really dig in and make those humongous strides instead of the one or twos. So I think we're in the right space with the right policies and the right programs.
That's really great to hear. I have one final thing to say. You had a slide on here, and you mentioned your, as a team, you get together and you'll go do, what'd you call it, a block blitz? Something like that?
Block blitz.
And you do things, so basically like helping to clean up a block, talking to neighbors, things like that. I want to, and this is for every department, so I hope this gets through, but I think you need to promote that more. One of the things that I'm noticing is that we have a serious image problem as government in general. Local government in particular. We had some discussion last night about some things going on at the state of Iowa legislature right now. There's some challenges, and one of the things I noticed when I talked to folks there is that they don't have the greatest sense of what local government is and what local government does. We kind of look like big bad government a lot of the time. And to be able to see you on your time away from your regular job, doing work for the community in that way together, get as many pictures of that on social media as you possibly can. And I mean it. I think it's really important that we trumpet that. And I know it's hard for folks like you, because you do a lot of the work that you do sort of thanklessly and you just get it done. But I think we need to make sure that the community knows that those things are happening, because that is how we build trust in who you are and how we humanize what government really is. So I would hope that you can take some more pictures and get those out there a little bit more for a lot of people to see. I think it'd be really helpful.
Ben will be your person for that. He's all on it. He got us all shirts that are really bright and have our name on them, and so you can really see us all as a group.
Is
He's
he
your guy.
Is he the TikToker of the group? Is that what that is? Yeah. Excellent.
That's LaMetra, but we'll get him on it.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for this presentation. It was very helpful, and we appreciate you all being here tonight.
Thanks.
With that, we can move on to the purchase of services, which I believe is,
Not me, but.
not you. Okay, I thought you were
Bring it
I'm
up.
getting ready to go. So we'll go there when we're ready. So Alexis, are we right back to you for this one?
Yes,
It
we
is.
are.
Okay, all right. So purchase of services.
All right, Alexis Steger, Housing and Community Development Director. This one's a quick one, but really what our purchase of services is those programs that nonprofits can administer and do in our community that meet our city council goals and outcomes that maybe we can't support quite as well as a nonprofit can. or other partners. It doesn't have to be a nonprofit. We have contracted services as well. Obviously, it costs money to have people here, and sometimes another organization just has a better build for that. And so they're meeting our outcomes. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about what in your budget is going towards these activities. So there's kind of a three-tiered way that we do this. We have an Arts and Culture Sustainability Neighborhoods Grant. Then we have contracted services, and then we have purchase of services grants. So they're three different things. They sound a lot alike, but they are very different. We have kind of a grants and contracts team, and it's made up of all of those departments and those heads that contribute to that. And you'll get to hear about the arts neighborhood later from Jill. Purchase services, like I said, were the activities that fit your goals and priorities, but really aren't provided in our normal course of city business. Our purchase of services is a competitive grant, so that's that $100,000, and so people apply for that grant. And then it's reviewed by the CDAC, so the Community Development Advisory Commission, and then they bring those to the City Council for approval. Eligible applicants are nonprofit organizations, faith-based organizations, anyone with that goal that the City Council has. But the services have to be delivered in the City of Dubuque. They cannot be out in the county. And they must benefit low to moderate income populations. There are some ineligible costs. You can't purchase equipment, capital improvements, building improvements. This is not for that. This is for services. So there are some things that are excluded from those applications. A lot of times the purpose is to serve those human services. So those are those outreach, the supports for the elderly, for any others that are meeting your goals and objectives. We do provide training workshops so that applicants know how to meet your expectations, how to successfully submit an application. When you have nonprofits and faith-based organizations, sometimes they need a little guidance, so we make sure we have those and hold them in the spring. And then people have that same base to be able to submit an application. And then we have a scoring process on how they're meeting your city council goals and priorities. And again, they have to benefit the low to mod income households. They also do have to report to us quarterly on those outcomes, so we want to make sure that they're meeting those stated goals into which they applied. Last year, we had, these were the people who won that purchase services grant, and we can only serve those for 2 years. So those that have been successful 2 years in a row have to take a break, and then other organizations get a chance to compete into that. Sometimes Community Development Block Grant contributes funds to this. This year, with the less entitlement, it is 100% general funded, which is shown again. The arts and neighborhoods, so when we talk about arts and neighborhood grants, and Joel gets into these a little bit more, the arts and cultural grant is the $295,000, some for operating, some for special projects. And then we have the neighborhood grants, and that's run out of the city manager's budget, so you did hear a little bit about that previously. And then the Sustainable Dubuque Community Grants, again, run out of the city manager's office for that total arts neighborhood sustainability grants. And those run all a little bit different, but all applications and out into the community. And then we have contracted services. So these are the services that the council approves, and then we have contracts with them for annual services. These have not changed significantly this year because these are the ones that help us run basically our services for the city. So these have not changed much this year, but the total contracted services is $3.1 million this year in the fiscal year 24 proposed budget. And that is all we have for purchase of services.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We are in a public hearing to discuss the purchase of services fiscal year 24 budget. Do we have any public input on this item? Anyone virtually?
No, you don't.
Okay,
No input received.
all right, thank you. Back to the table then for any discussion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Resnick.
On the second page here now, you mentioned that the Convivium presentation to Dubuque Dream Center, there was a competitive plan there. On the second page with these others, with the $2 million worth here, now, they're not all competitive, right? I mean, we talked to these people way early, and and we have a plan for that. And that's accepted by the city council, and when is that done? Right now? Or I know, you know, they've come before us and we have, you know, goals and priorities. When are these numbers set?
Sure, so they submit a funding request through the budget process, so typically I send out a link for a funding request application in November, and they usually have about a month to put that funding request together. They're required to identify city council goals and priorities that they support, and some other items in their funding requests. And then they also have to identify the projects that the money goes towards and, you know, the goals of those projects in that funding request. And then those funding requests are reviewed by myself and the city manager. And if there's increases requested, those are submitted as improvement packages and reviewed through the budget process, sometimes recommended. I think there were a couple that were not recommended as far as increases or new requests, for example. And then they're just part of the recommended budget that comes to city council.
Okay, and one specific, I know a few years ago, we had talked about the Humane Society and how we interacted with them and how we made payments. I noticed that we went from under $150,000 to $175,000. Is that because they have more animals to take care of? Are they doing, I couldn't find, you know, the reasons for these numbers.
So that would have been included in the health services portion of the budget. So they have a CPI, so inflationary index increase. I think it's based on 5% in 2024. But I'd have to pull up health services to verify what that.
I see, but they've all been scrutinized and I mean, because
Reviewed.
this is a finite source of money, right? But they're not competing, you know, for a certain amount. This is what they need. And,
Correct.
and we are getting services, and this is what those services require.
Correct.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, Mike?
of the example that you used, the Humane Society, so they have a multi-year contract with the city, and it expired last year, so we renegotiated their contract, and so during the year, the council approved their new contract, and it had these new numbers in it. So that was just an arm's length negotiation.
Great, thank you.
All right, seeing no further discussion then, thank you very much for the second presentation there, Alexis. So then, we can prepare for our third public hearing, planning services. All right, Wally, ready when you are.
Take it away. All right.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. Wally Wormott, Planning Services Manager. Going to go over our Planning Services Department budget here for fiscal year 2024. Let's see if we hit the arrow here. So to start off, our mission statement with the Planning Services Department is to provide a friendly, knowledgeable, and professional city planning, historic preservation, and development services to our city residents to ensure viable, livable, and equitable Dubuque. So what can I say about Jane Glennon? So our office has retirement. So we were very fortunate to have Jane participate in our office her last 3 years of her retirement. She's retiring in March. She started off in our finance department with Ken Teacup, and then she was over in the housing department with Alexis for a little bit, working in the rehabilitation department. Came back to finance, was our city treasurer, working down the finance department, and then she's finishing out her career with our office. So she'll be greatly missed in our office, and her service has been much appreciated. So the Planning Services Department is composed of about 8.38 full-time equivalents. The 0.38 is an actual planning intern. That's a seasonal intern that we hire throughout the year. Here's kind of the breakdown of our flow chart for our office. We actually have 3 activities: development services, city planning, and historic preservation. And that's where you'll see a bulk of the additional assistant planners and associate planners and how that's all broken down. I'll explain that a little bit more as we go through this. Here's the planning bunch. So Shini Moon is our associate planner in our office. She's been in the planning department for about 2 years now. Myself, I've been 22 years. Jason Duba, another individual that started out in our transportation department, was over in the lead grant department with the housing department, and we stole him away from there. He's got a planner by trade. He's a great transportation planner in our office. Chris Happ-Olson, historic preservation. She works with our long-range planning and advisory commission as well. And then Travis Robelgen is an assistant planner. He's been with our office about 4 years. Charlie Miller, stalwart in our office. He's our zoning enforcement officer, going strong. He's worked for our office for about 10 years. And then Matt O'Brien is our new planning technician. He's been in the office for about 4 months now. And we're actively in the process of hiring a new administrative assistant with the retirement for Jane Glennon. So the other thing I'd like to talk about is the Planning Service Department has several boards and commissions. You see me at the City Council meetings quite a bit representing those boards and commissions and relaying their information out to them. The Zoning Board of Adjustment, there's a breakdown of all those individuals that you guys have appointed over the years. In addition to our Zoning Advisory Commission, I just like to say we're very fortunate, and all my gratitude to these individuals. They get paid very well for the job that they have to do. There's a little joke there, but then also we have our other board and commission here, our Historic Preservation Commission. As you notice, we have a full boards, with the exception of our Long Range Planning Advisory Commission. We have 2 vacant positions. But you know, that middle statement there, we can't do it without you, is very true. These boards and commissions are all involved with state code and federal code for some instances. We cannot rezone a property. We cannot get involved with approving plats and certain things without these boards and commissions. They get their power and authority granted through the state of Iowa and state code. So without these individuals serving on these boards and commissions, we wouldn't be able to do quite a few of the things that you guys see before you from our department. In addition to those 4 boards and commissions, we get involved with 2 design review committees. We have a Porter Dubuque Design Review Committee and a Chaplet Mid-Island Design Review Committee. Those are for our plan unit developments and those special purpose districts. A little bit more involved with the review of the site plans and the physical makeup of the buildings and structures and the land uses in those areas. So those are a combination of city staff, combination of some of our partners from the Greater Dubuque Development Corporation, the Visitor and Convention Bureau, the National Mississippi River Museum Aquarium, also property owners from the Q Casino and everyone else located in those various locations. So this is our creating an equitable community of choice. So our office actually has an equity plan where we track, where are we doing our work in relationship to those individuals in our community development block grant group areas, how are you impacting some of those lives. We definitely talk about equitable fines and fees. And when it comes to enforcement, a lot of people are not aware of what the rules and regulations are. So first thing we do is to inform. We inform the individual that they're in violation. They may not be aware that they're in violation. And I'll touch on some of those enforcement cases that we have. And we try to work with them because we want to see compliance before we have to get to that point where we have to do a fine or a fee, which is later on through the process. And then text amendments. We listen to our residents. We talk about child care. We amend our unified development to make it a little bit more easier for access to child care. We also talk about creating additional housing, accessory dwelling units, and several other aspects with regards to our unified development code. Fiscal year 2023 highlights, Imagine Dubuque Comprehensive Plan implementation phase. That will always be going on for several years. That is a process that we work with in our department. We're actually working with Chris Olson, and then Jason Duba helps assist us with the implementation of that plan. We're doing quite a bit of work with that, and actually I'll talk in a little bit with regards to Achieve It software, which you guys use for public reporting for city council goals and priorities, but where we're at with that with the Imagine Dubuque plan. Creation of housing incentives. So we worked with the Housing and Community Development Department and the Economic Development Department in order to help create some of these incentives to encourage housing in our community. I can say it's definitely working. We have seen a major uptick with regards to residential units that are being submitted to our office. That'll take us to the development review team. I'm pretty sure Alexis probably touched on some of those projects. I'll talk a little bit about those in the near future with this presentation. And then also our Black Heritage Survey. We received a Historic Resource Development Grant for that survey, and that has been very positive. There's been a lot of public outreach, a lot of public involvement with that. We're not even done with the Black Heritage Survey, and we're already giving a bunch of presentations out to the public. It's just a great information that we have for that, and we hope to replicate that model for other individuals and groups located historically in our community. And then our vacant and developable land inventory interactive map. This is a map that was created to help identify those spaces where land is vacant and developable. It's an online GIS map. Why did we create it? Because we have a lot of developers that would say, I want to build in Dubuque, but where can I build? Where's the land? What's available? And this is a GIS map that allows them to be able to access that and use some of that information for them. Future initiatives, we received a certified local government grant, actually 2 of them, to conduct some in-depth architectural historic surveys of the Volker Highlands neighborhood and then also the Deerfield neighborhood surveys located outside of our downtown. We'll be working on a unified development code update, an update to our existing and future land use map. I think several city council meetings ago, you heard from Max O'Brien, who's working on a sanitary sewer update plan, and as sanitary sewer goes, that goes with our future land use and extension of our infrastructure for development. They kind of work hand in hand with each other. They need to know what we're gonna do future land use wise, but we also need to know, can we provide services to that area? And then we'll continue to implement the Imagine Dubuque Comprehensive Plan. And then our State Historic Preservation Office Programmatic Agreement. So our office conducts what they call Section 106 reviews. So anytime federal money is involved with the project, that there's a historical consultation that goes through the process. So a lot of the funding you heard tonight from the Housing Department for all those community development block grant funds or lead grant funds, every one of those projects has to come to our office for a historical consultation. We prepare all the history, the documentation, the background information. We submit that to the State Historic Preservation Office for their review, and then they respond back to us with, yes, we agree with the proposed work. We feel it's not going to have a negative impact, or if it will have a negative impact, these are some situations that we can mitigate. So that's a process that actually goes through our office. We're trying to work with the State Historic Preservation Office. They want a programmatic agreement. We want a programmatic agreement, which basically says, City of Dubuque, we know you're doing such a great job with all these reviews that we trust that you can just handle it and you don't have to submit it to our office unless there is a known identified historic property. Helps speed up the process for reviews and get some of that funding out into the community faster. Our requested property tax support is there. You can see $403,109 net property tax support for an average of $5.84 for our services in the Planning Services Department. Our city planning activity, we have 3 of them, like I mentioned. City planning is one of them. We provide staff support to our long-range planning advisory commission. We work to engage the community and develop partnerships that help implement Imagine Dubuque. We have an annexation study where we're also, one of our priorities is growth in our community, helps identify our potential growth areas. And then also we have, currently we have 128 pre-annexation agreements for 3,309 acres. Those have slowed down because, as I mentioned before, we had to do an amendment to our Unified Development Code. We've been preempted by state law from requiring pre-annexation agreements with being involved with subdividing of land. So if a county subdivision comes in, typically we would require a pre-annexation agreement. We can no longer do that. We're preempted by state law for those. We can still require pre-annexation agreements for extension of utilities and water and sewer, in addition to development agreements with regards to properties. Our Long Range Planning Advisory Commission, as you've seen before, all the members previously, they're in the process of reviewing and providing recommendations to City Council with regards to the Urban Revitalization District, new ones, and Urban Renewal Districts. So with those housing incentives that were approved, a lot of those are involved creating of those Urban Renewal Districts, Urban Revite Districts. Those actually have to go through our Long Range Planning Advisory Commission to be reviewed to see if they're in compliance with our comprehensive plan. We provide those recommendations and they come before the City Council here. We're also, once again, looking at updating our existing and future land use maps and talking about our vacant and developable land inventory as we look to grow our community. Talk a little bit about our Imagine Dubuque implementation. Like I mentioned before, Just this month, we've updated our entire plan into the Achieve It software. This is a great software that allows us to help track the plan with regards to all of our connectors, coordinators, and champions. We have 110 recommendations, and we work with various organizations and individuals in the city of Dubuque. Planning Services Department is the backbone organization, so we're kind of the taskmasters, kind of follow up with all these different groups and organizations to make sure that these recommendations are moving forward. But with that, the opportunity to upload that into the Achieve It software, it allows us to cross-reference plans. So someone might be able to look up, hey, I'm interested in what the city's doing with regards to broadband. So that allows us to cross-reference anything that's been identified in our Imagine Dubuque plan with also city council goals and priorities, and hopefully in the future, additional plans that will be uploaded into that software. Development services, there's a nice photo of the Rustic Point subdivision, Vintage Estates of Dubuque. We provide staff support to our zoning board of adjustment and our zoning advisory commission. We also facilitate and coordinate the development review team. And that development review team is composed of the Planning Services Department, Engineering, Water, Fire. Building are the 5 major players, but then we also get the Health Department, Leisure Services Department, Public Works. There's a lot of other departments that all get notified about requests that they attend this meeting, especially if it involves a restaurant or a parkland or something that may come along across their plate. So in fiscal year 2022, we had 44 development review team cases. That's kind of the breakdown of what they are: concept review, site plan, or improvement, subdivision plat. So we actually had 30 meetings in fiscal year 2022 with regards to those plans. This is just a breakdown of approved development square footage. Now, when we say approved development, this is actually square footage of commercial properties that have come to the development review team, not actually physically constructed in that year, but what has been reviewed and approved. So for instance, in fiscal year 2022, those numbers kind of correlate with Stoneman Road has a commercial building, multi-tenant building you can see out there on Stoneman Road. We have Tidal Wave Auto Spa. Clower Manufacturing has a 60,000 square foot addition. Vintage Estates built their clubhouse and several of their buildings already. Mercy One had a small addition to their property. Industrial 20 building, I can go on and on and on. There's several site plans that we have reviewed through our department and the development review team. Residential subdivision approvals, this kind of just gives you a little bit of a breakdown. This is the Rustic Points Estate number 2 plat that was approved through your city council. And then the Vintage Estates, which is 35 residences. If you have an opportunity to go out there, but they probably have about 15 of them up right now. Amazingly, they're moving very quickly on that subdivision. And then Silver Oaks Estates, located on the south side of our community, is in the process of grading, get the streets in, curb, and working to get that project open for lots to be sold. Our Zoning Advisory Commission in fiscal year 2022 had 35 zoning advisory cases. There's a breakdown of the pie chart, but then we also track where are those cases happening. Are they in a community development block grant district area? We tracked a total number of cases for that and what type of case located throughout our community. Same thing for the Zoning Board of Adjustment, and we give you a breakdown of what type of cases, the number of cases. You can see pretty average going through there. If you look back on the Zoning Advisory Commission, we have a little bit of an uptick, but this is fiscal year 2022. I expect that to be a lot larger in fiscal year 23 when I report back to you next year. Zoning enforcement cases, this would be Charlie Miller, our zoning enforcement officer. The calls for service that he goes out and takes a look in our community. As you can see, bulk of his work gets involved with improper vehicle storage. If you look at the total number of cases over the fiscal year, you can see they're slowly stepping down over time. And that's directly related to a lot of the work that Charlie gets involved. He's very active. He works a lot with the property owners to seek compliance. And I think the more he's out in the field visibly being seen, the more awareness there is with regards to what's permitted and what's not permitted. Historic preservation is other activity. We support the Historic Preservation Commission. And Chris Happ-Olson is our staff member that works with the commission. We work on conducting research on planning and preservation projects. And we write a lot of grants, policies, and ordinances. demolition permits, design reviews in our historic district, all those Section 106 reviews that we talk about. We get involved with historic tax credits from a standpoint of helping them determine if their property is eligible or listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And we actually have the Black Heritage Survey, which once again, I just want to bring attention to that. It's a great survey that we've been going through, a lot of public input we're receiving, not only from our community, but former members who used to live in our community. And that we hope to have that project wrapped up here this late spring so we can give you the full report on what we found with that. And then also, our historic preservation, we get involved with the survey and evaluation of all these different archaeological resources. We have over 6,000 historic properties that we surveyed. We're protecting over 2,000 structures. And then there's been, for this fiscal year 2022, about $5.8 million invested in our historic and downtown neighborhoods. Once again, we do a chart here identifying where all those design reviews cases are taking place. And once again, you can see a bulk of our work gets involved with those Section 106 reviews. And then you can see the large uptick in fiscal year 2022 from 21. And that's just, working with the Housing and Community Development Department with the grants that they received, the additional staff, and the number of those cases that are coming before our office. We actually do a customer service satisfaction survey. So with all of our boards and commissions, we send out a survey for them to be able to fill out, return back to our office. We also have an online form that they can fill out. So this is the result of our surveys from fiscal year 2022. And then I'd just like to point out that not only are we providing services to our residents and developers, but we also provide a lot of services to other departments in the city's organization. Like I like to say a lot of times, especially when I meet one-on-one with you, when you initially get appointed or elected to the city council, we get our fingers in everyone's business, and that's true. So a lot of the information that I presented to you is not everything we do in our office. We have a lot of one-offs, census data, annexation. I mean, there's quite a few other things that we get involved with, but these are just some of the things how we help assist the other departments. So our recommended improvement request, there is a recurring request for the Housing Iowa Conference with the uptick in trying to get more housing in our community. This position did not attend the Housing Iowa Conference, and that's a request that I had the opportunity to attend that conference each year. With our American Planning Association Conference, this is our national affiliated organization, and this would be the Iowa chapter. It gives us an opportunity for a lot of our newer staff to attend the Iowa APA conference that's locally in the state of Iowa, and allows us to interact with our fellow individuals, fellow planners. It also helps us generate ideas, and it's an opportunity for networking in our office. The Iowa Bicycle Summit is something that we haven't attended in the past. The engineering department's attended. I actually have Jason Duba in our office is my bike guy. So we're asking for a recurring budget for him to be able to attend that Iowa Bicycle Summit that typically happens in the Des Moines area, especially as we look to grow our network and our trail system throughout our community. Leadership Dubuque and Dale Carnegie training is for our planning tech. Everyone in our office has gone through Dale Carnegie training. We do a lot of public speaking, a lot of engagement. It's a great training opportunity for our staff. So this is an opportunity to allow that new individual hire from our planning tech to take advantage in the Dale Carnegie training, then also the Leadership Dubuque training that goes along with that. And then also Chamber of Commerce Young Professionals membership. It's coming that we're a public-facing department, so just that interaction with other individuals and other youth in our community, and we like to hear what they have to say as we work forward to implementing the Imagine Dubuque plan. We're asking for just a recurring subscription to our Telegraph Herald for our office for us to help track. We're in the paper quite often, as you can see. And then also the City of Dubuque shirts, non-reoccurring. So this is for staff. We present quite a bit at City Life. We're in the public. It helps identify us as city individuals, but then also some extra shirts for Charlie Miller because he is our zoning enforcement officer. He is in the public, and we like to have him clearly identified as a city official, especially when he's going out doing inspections. Capital improvement projects, $10,000 for FY24. This is a slide that I add that initially there wasn't going to be any funding available in FY24, but this is our seed money that we use to apply for all of our historic preservation grants. So where is this money coming from? We're actually we evaluated our fees to increase our fees based on the actual cost of service and doing a detailed analysis breakdown, because this took several months actually to arrive at some of these numbers. We're expecting to increase our revenue by about $23,000 a year based on the actual cost of service that we're providing, specifically for a lot of the development type projects that are involved with our office. And then also, we also look at being very equitable with our fines and fees. So a lot of those homeowners that might be located in the downtown or the CDBG eligible districts and say, I just want to build a garage, but I have to be closer than what's allowed. We keep those fees low. They're not even to the full cost of service, because we want to encourage redevelopment in those communities, but then we're also looking at equitable wise, helping assist with financing some of those improvement projects that they're looking at doing. Performance measures, we track average days of reviews through all of our boards and commissions, as you can see there. We also track the number of inspections conducted to bring properties in compliance. Imagine Dubuque in our city planning, I just want to kind of note here with the Achieve It software, and we'll give a presentation to you, our annual update in August before you do your city council goal setting, but a lot of our statuses have changed, so our statuses are trying to match what the city council goals and priority statuses are. So we went from actually 5 statuses down to 4, so you'll see a little bit change in how we track those recommendations and how they're moving forward with implementation. And then also historic preservation review, our average day to review all those applications, and then an investment that's located in our downtown and historic neighborhoods. That's all I have, unless you guys have any questions.
All right, well, thank you very much, Wally. Well, we are in a public hearing to discuss the planning services fiscal year 2024 budget. Do we have any public input on this? Seeing no one here, do we have any electronic? Okay.
And no input received.
All right, back to the table then. Mr. Resnick.
Thank you. So Deerville,
Yeah.
when we first got into town, people pointed out the John Deere homes. So when did we designate this? And does this designation lead to some funding possibilities? In other words, does the designation, how does it affect our citizens who live in the area?
Yeah, sure. So this is actually to do an in-depth architectural evaluation to help identify that district as a National Register eligible district. By identifying that, that opens up funding opportunities through the state, whether it's through tax credits. But it also helps identify and bring community pride with regards to certain neighborhoods in Dubuque. You know, it's important that we tell the history of all of our neighborhoods. We've been focused quite a bit in the downtown, because that's where our older, grander structures are. But our community is more than just the downtown. So we're actually getting up on the hill, we're expanding out a little bit more with regards to those areas. But this will just be a survey to kind of tell the history of that area to help identify it. And then the next step would be to actually list on the National Register of Historic Places. Now, a lot of times people hear that and they freak out, oh, they're going to tell me what I can and can't do with my property. Just if you're listed on the National Register of Historic Places, there is no afforded protection to you. You can still go through and demolish your property. No one can tell you what you can and can't do with your property. They can if you get involved with federal funding, or if you're located in one of our city designated historic districts. So there's no downside to being listed on the National Register of Historic Places. There is definitely a big upsize as you look at historic tax credits that for redevelopments and be able to take advantage of that. So.
Okay, thank you. I mean, driving through those neighborhoods, there's extensive renovations going on. Mm-hmm. Because what I heard when I got to town looking for a home to buy is that they were built very quickly because John Deere expanded quickly, and they needed things like insulation and those type of things. And so the citizens who live there have modified the homes quite a bit. Sometimes you can't even tell it was a John Deere home. And so is there a benefit to keeping it, the way it was, keeping it real, as they say on the street? So, I mean, will there be a benefit? Who knows, huh?
Sure. So, I mean, it really depends. I've actually been in several of those homes. They're actually slab construction, very thick concrete walls with brick veneer, very well built, to say the least, with regards to that. So when we get involved with alteration and changes to property, we follow what we call the Secretary of Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. It's okay to modify a historic structure. When we get involved with individual properties that may have retained what they call a lot of architectural or historical integrity, a lot of the original fabric still there. When they look at tax credits, the more that's there, the more opportunity there is to receive funding. The more alterations that are done to the property, and the less likelihood you'll be able to take advantage of some of those tax credit projects.
I see, so much like the historic district that I used to live in, there was
Yeah.
class 1, which is great. Our house was a class 3, and next door to me was a class 5. You know, so all in that district. So it'll be similar to that.
Right, yeah, I mean, so really, most of the properties there will probably be identified to be contributing to the National Register District, so they'll tell the entire history and entire story of to the Deerville neighborhood for that, so yeah, definitely. But yeah, there will be some that'll be identified non-contributing like you've identified, or maybe not as significant with regards to the integrity of the property. But that doesn't necessarily say we can provide them funding to maybe help bring it back, so.
Well, thank you for interesting information. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, Ms. Russell?
You mentioned this Achieve It software. Who would have access to that? Will we have access to that, or the public, or is that just something internal?
Sure, did I break the news on that too,
No,
Corey?
you didn't. Corey Burback, Assistant City Manager. So it is a platform that we can set up different views based on user. So staff are starting to load plans right now and use it kind of as a management platform. You all will get your own custom view that will have your quarterly council goals and priorities reports and other reporting. And then we can also essentially embed widgets into any of our city web pages so the public has greater transparency as well.
Great, thank you.
Well, Wally, we sure hang out with you a lot. I mean, you're here all the time. And we see you, we see your staff. There's a lot of things that we hear from you. So, you know, we appreciate the work that you and your staff do. You are small but mighty, are you not? I mean, like you don't exactly have a ton of staff in there, but wow, are you doing a lot? I mean, there's a lot that's coming your way.
We do definitely do a lot, and I can't do it without my staff. So it's a great opportunity with all the individuals that we've hired. They do a great job. They're dedicated. All of them have their very special abilities when it comes to their different topics. But one thing in our office is cross-training. So our big thing is our customer service, high-performance Montgomery training. So if one of us is not there, we need to have the ability to have other staff. So we have the ability for all these individuals to understand what's going on. And our office is open. Have you been to our office? So we're cubicle land, and everyone hears our conversations, and it's just a great opportunity. We're just like one big happy family there, to be honest with you. So
That's great to hear. Well, and I really appreciated the numbers you showed us today. You know, it shows the growth in the work that you're doing, the cases that are coming your way. It also I mean, you had the satisfaction surveys on here. I think these are important things for us to be able to see, to show us that the work that's happening here is having a result. And it's more than just what we see when you come to us over and over again with, you know, different zoning and requests and things like that. You know, there's a lot happening. So thank you very much for sharing it all. I don't think I have any other questions for you, but yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. One thing I left out of here, there'll be another improvement package request in here, and that's going to be to, Wally, since the budget was submitted, has done a review of all of our fees. And so that improvement package will be to implement a new fee structure, which will generate about $25,000 a year. We're going to be recommending we take $10,000 of that and use it to match, provide a match for this annual grant that we get from the state to do these surveys that Councilmember Resnick was asking about, so we can survey different parts of our community for historic issues. But that will provide $15,000 that, at least as of today, would go unallocated. So sometime between now and the public hearing, we need to look at what the council would like to do with that, either allocate it to a project or reduce the levy or whatever you choose to do. And it could be a CIP project, or it could be an operating fund project. It's not restricted to either one, because it's just a general fund revenue. Is that an accurate description, Jennifer?
yeah.
So if I'm understanding correctly, we've got, you said around 25,000 coming
Right,
as a
from the fee
result of
increase.
those increased fees, and then there's 10,000 of that allocated towards the planning.
Yeah, so that we'll be
Department itself.
recommending to provide a match to the annual grant that we get to do this, the historic surveys.
Okay. And then that leaves around 15,000 unallocated that we need to work with. Okay. Thank you for that. All right, any further questions or discussion? Yeah,
Mr.
Mr.
Mayor,
Resnick.
just to, that 15,000 that you're talking about will probably be earmarked for this department?
No, so it just goes into the general fund revenue stream. No, we don't have departments allocate, all kinds of departments generate general fund revenue. For instance, enforcement revenue from police or public health, that's all general fund revenue.
Oh, I see.
So we don't have departments say, hey, here's how much I generate, so I get to do this, and somebody else, you know, that, everything is prioritized against each other. It's not just confined within a department.
I see. Well, Mr. Wernemont had all these improvement packages, and they said, you know, here's what it actually, you know, this is what we're asking for, and then this is the tax funds. And so they had some other funds that they were going to use. I thought that would be that funds that that department raised, but there's no connection to how much they bring in to,
And how much they get, no. No, there's not. So that $15,000 that now is not allocated towards anything, you could allocate it any way you wanted. You could say, well, we're going to reduce the tax levy that is recommended, or we're going, or gee, there was a improvement package here in the budget somewhere that we really wanted to do, and that would cover it. Or there was a capital improvement project that was important to us that wasn't funded, and we want to use it towards that. It's kind of an open book for that.
I see. Okay, all right, excuse my confusion, but like in the Housing and Community Development Department, part of their resources is building permits.
Right.
So those building permits, they don't go to the general fund,
They do. So,
but they're counted towards,
no, we're just showing you where that's what they're generating.
I see.
So departments generate revenues, and we show you what revenues they generate.
Right.
Now, there's certain departments, like the water department, or the storm sewers, or sanitary sewer, that are enterprise funds, and all that money stays within the enterprise fund. And it doesn't, and they have to generate all their own money for their department to operate. But general fund departments aren't like that. Now, we do have standards that we set. So, for instance, back to the Housing and Community Development Department. So the rental inspection program has to fund at least 90% of their costs through rental inspection fees. But that's just pointing out to you that that's how much money they're putting into the general fund. Would you say that's an accurate description, Jennifer? So it's not actually where, so let's say they generated 110% of their the cost of operating rental inspections. We wouldn't say to them, hey, you got any ideas how to spend the other 10% over 100%? It would go into some other budget to keep property taxes down. Now, that's kind of a bad example because we wouldn't do that, because it's intentional that we target about 90% on the rental inspection programs, because that's about how much of that program that goes directly to inspecting rental properties. And since we have a fee to inspect rental properties, so every property taxpayer doesn't have to pay for it, we target that 90% level. The reason it's not 100% is because some of our some of our inspections are not necessarily rental inspections. Sometimes there's an inspection of a single-family home because there's a complaint or something like that. So they have some other activities they do besides just rental inspections.
Okay, so I can see why you take months to develop this budget. There's so much involved. Final question, Mr. Mayor, is, so the recommended improvement requests, Housing Iowa Conference, recurring $1,000, net property cost $436. So where's the other $564 coming from?
That's the administrative overhead charges that we've talked about in the past. So for instance, those enterprise fund departments I talked to you about, like water and sanitary sewer, they benefit from having a planning department. And, you know, the planning department organizes all the reviews of, if you submit a redevelopment proposal, they are the ones that you've submitted to. They then bring all those departments together, get their comments, gee, where do they need a water line, where do they need a sewer line, what kind of stormwater do they have collection, do they have to do? So that all costs money. So the alternative to charging those administrative overheads would be just the property taxpayers pay for it. Even if they, you could argue what level of their benefit is. So those offsets that you see in improvement packages come from those administrative overhead charges to those different enterprise funds.
Great. Thank you for the information. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Wally. We appreciate your time tonight. We will move on then to our final presentation of the evening in the Economic Development Department. We're going to take a 3 to 4 minute break, give or take, do some jumping jacks. But Jill, you can do some jumping jacks yourself. Okay, everybody, we can go ahead and get rolling. Next up, we have Economic Development tonight.
Off you go. Hi there. Economic Development Director Jill Connors. Here we are, last one of the day, I believe. Our mission is to deliver programming that ensures the economic and social health of the community. And the way I like to think of it is we work really hard to create jobs, and then we work really hard to make this a place that the workers want to live. So it's that combo package. You might ask yourself why we have 3.75 full-time equivalents and 7 humans in our department. That works out to some part-time. We have an AmeriCorps, so that doesn't count because she gets paid through AmeriCorps, her stipend, et cetera. And our grant admin, Laura Merrick, she gets paid with grant funding, so that's not in at 3.75. So we're really doing a great job with a little bit of money here from the taxpayers. Here's the group minus Michael Williams, our intern. He wasn't able to make it to the photo shoot that day. So we have from the left Ian Hatch, our Assistant Economic Development Director. We have Amy Henson, who's our AmeriCorps worker working with teens related to the arts. Myself, Cindy Kramer, who is our confidential account clerk. Jenny Peterson Brandt, who's our Arts and Cultural Affairs Manager, and Laura Merrick, who does administration of that $500,000 NEA grant that we received. Our goals are to attract and expand businesses, and then, like I mentioned before, we're doing everything else to make sure that those businesses have quality workforce. So that's workforce development, childcare access, housing access, a connected community, meaning with broadband, and then quality of life, including arts and culture. For about $1.5 million of tax support, we operate our, that's our budget, in our operating budget. That's about $21 for the average homeowner. Here's my famous TIF triangle, or as Corey likes to call it, the TIF quadrilateral. It's not quite a triangle. This shows how we use tax increment financing. There's always a base value to a property. That's that green area. The orange is as the property taxes are going up. That's the part that we can, that we're authorized to use as an incentive for the project, and there's always an ending date for those incentives going to the project, at which point we arrive at the yellow, and all of the taxing bodies are then enjoying a larger slice of pie. The whole time that we're using that orange increment, though, all of the taxing bodies continue to receive the taxes that they were receiving at the beginning of the project. So nobody loses out on anything. We're gaining. It's just a couple of years down the road. We use this for job creation and retention. It leverages private investment, housing development. We use it for downtown rehab projects,
to eliminate slum and blight and for public improvements. Since 1995, we've had nearly 100 projects utilize the TIF rebates. $100 million in public investment has leveraged about $770 million in other investment. We've created or retained over 10,000 jobs in our community, and you can see that every dollar that the city puts in creates $7.32 from somewhere else. So that's what we're leveraging every time that we use TIF. That's an average. When we put these numbers together, Ian and I were looking at this going, what do you mean we only did 4 development agreements? It felt like a lot more. Well, we worked on a lot more, but we had several that got through the process right at the beginning of this year, so they're not included in that number. But we had 4 development agreements, 3 grant agreements, which incentivized collectively over $13 million, created 160 jobs, and 22 new rental units. But you'll see a picture of the Kretschmer building, which has 48 new units that came online this year, but the agreement was signed the year before, so that's why you don't see those 48 included in the number of apartments here. Always working toward equity in our community. And why that's important is because what we do in our department addresses poverty. We know that there's 8 determinants of poverty that have been identified in the Poverty Reduction and Prevention Plan. You see economic insecurity is one of them, but it also talks about lack of transportation and education and childcare, and you'll see that a lot of our efforts are focused on those very determinants. We're focused on, we have our hands in, like planning does, we have our hands in efforts that a lot of other departments work on, meaning housing and childcare, the Opportunity Dubuque program, which is run by NICC and upskills workers, so that helps, train the workforce that our employers need. We're working on transportation to the jobs, fiber to homes and businesses. We have targeted small business support now, which is rather recent, the past several years from our department, equitable access to arts and culture, and inspiring entrepreneurship. Our target areas are the downtown. You can think of Central Avenue, Millwork District, the Port, as well as Chaplin Schmidt Island, Kerper, Industrial Center, and the Tech Park. Downtown investment really makes the difference. You can see 1540 Central here. They received a facade grant. They got the first floor all fixed up, and now there's a new small business in there. Upstairs has several apartments, so those are now fit for habitation. A downtown is what makes a community unique. People don't drive here to look at wide avenues that aren't walkable, and we have a great community all over the community, but why people want to come visit Dubuque is a lot about the downtown. So making an investment there is really important. You can see almost $1 billion has been invested for new construction and rehabs and sales and public improvements, with over 4,000 net new jobs in the downtown, and most of that has happened just in the last 20 years. Related to high-speed internet, we have a goal of having universal availability of it, so that's to homes and to businesses. We want it to be affordable, and we have 681 households that have qualified for the program that provides $30 off every month, which if you pick a program, a service that's only $30, now it's free. So that's pretty affordable. We want increased access to digital equity services, and then a cyber secure community, which happens with redundancies, so we're working on that. The strategies we use are with our partnerships. There are 11 active carriers in the community right now, and 8 of those have master service agreements with the city. We're also leveraging ARPA funds in that work. We have a committee at the city, including working with Dave Lyons over at Greater Dubuque Development. They meet bi-weekly. They indicate we're going to see record activity in the coming 18 months. We've got at least 7 carriers actively building out infrastructure. I'm on Communications is the largest of those, and they've got 11 new cabinets being put in, each cabinet serving 200 to 300 homes. They expect that build out to be complete by the end of 2024. And we have a 4th free public Wi-Fi installation that's just been installed near the curve on Central Avenue. I talked briefly about supporting small businesses. Here's a photo of our most recent cohort of small business owners. I've got some quotes listed here on the slide. Comments that these folks made. Caprice Jones over at Fountain of Youth works with these, and he did a little individual film of each one and said, what'd you get out of the program and how did it work for you? And these were some of their quotes of what they thought of the program. They really liked it, what it did for them personally and for their business. We're connecting those small businesses to the different resources at all levels. We're working with the National League of Cities right now to create a hub and spoke model, and that dovetails with the county provided a $400,000 grant. They were granting out their ARPA dollars, and they granted out at the time to NICC, but the lead on that project now has become the Innovation Lab. So we're also working with the Innovation Lab as the hub to create a hub and spoke model so that small business owners can go find one place to start and then find all the resources that they need. Our project needs to meet some milestones by April and by August of this year, and then the county effort is a 3-year effort. So what we're doing here jumpstarts that process, and then it will go countywide. Talking about workforce development, how do we get those employees for those jobs that we're creating? Opportunity Dubuque is a program that's run by NICC that's supported indirectly from the city through Greater Dubuque Development in a partnership there. 161 individuals went through that program in fiscal year 2022, and 93% of those graduates have a job or are continuing their education. So it's really a great program. Why is that important? You can see the crash course that we're on in that chart there between the decreasing number of working age individuals in our community and the increasing number of jobs. So we're doing a great job of increasing the number of jobs, but we gotta make sure we keep pace with the number of working age individuals in those jobs. Here's a smattering of the folks that we partner with, either through day-to-day operations and meetings, with contracted service agreements to make sure we get all of the work done. I think Alexis said it well earlier tonight that the reason we have contracts with other organizations is because they do what they do best, and so we let them do it. Since they're experts in certain fields, it makes sense for us to support what they're doing versus trying to take on more staff at the city to do that same work. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jenny Peterson-Brandt to talk to you about the arts.
Hello, good evening. Jenny Peterson-Brandt, Arts and Cultural Affairs Manager for the City of Dubuque. I'm going to talk about the arts and cultural affairs efforts that happen within the Economic Development Department. So some of our activities include the arts implementation of the Arts and Culture Master Plan, facilitating our arts and culture grant programs, and specifically I'm talking about our operating support program and our special projects programs, which are recurring competitive grant programs that we offer. Art on the River, which has been around since 2005 for our community. I think I just got that date wrong, but oh well, it's been around for a while and continues to be a really a program that has a great reputation and is well received by the community. Our initiatives that are related to engaging and cultivating our creative economy locally. The Winter Art Snow Sculpting Festival that we host in partnership with the Dubuque Museum of Art, and then other grant-funded initiatives as we secure grant funding to come into the community. So a lot of that work that I talked about and these highlights that I'm going to mention, this is not done by our department alone. We have a 7-member commission who is really there throughout the year to support, review, and to recommend the work that is happening around that. As Jill mentioned, we have the first highlight that I included for 2022 was that we were able to bring on a part-time, limited-term grants and communication assistant, Laura Merrick, that Jill mentioned, who is specifically focused on administering the National Endowment for the Arts re-granting funding. So we have Laura with us through August of this year. Because of that NEA funding, we were also able to develop a new grant program. So we've just finished up the re-granting to nonprofit organizations and just unveiled and are currently receiving applications for the program that will be funding individual creatives. We brought on our inaugural Teen Creative Engagement Specialist through a partnership with AmeriCorps this year. So we have Amy Henson with us, who her full-time contract with AmeriCorps takes us through mid-October of this year, and then that's a reoccurring position, so we envision that that will continue to get filled, and that her focus is really on engaging teens and their creative interests in the community, and also really focused right now on identifying gaps and barriers for them to participate and have access to arts and creative programming. In 2022, we were able to start implementing the Art en Route sidewalk murals that are at the bus shelters throughout the community. As a reminder, that was funded through Bloomberg Philanthropies funding that we received in 2021, but we waited on the implementation really because of COVID and not wanting to, engage an artist and bring new artists to the community to be out there doing that work. So that's really underway now. The photo that is included here is Emily Cotton-Cram, who is a local artist who has done 2 of those bus shelter murals, one at Elm Street, and then also one down on Locust, right across from Washington Park. So if you see that work, that's her creations. We also sold 4 Art on the River sculptures this year, which was really exciting. And I did a continuation of highlights for 2022 because we had a lot, we just had a busy year for arts and culture. So one of the other things that we did was partnering with the Bee Branch Mitigation Project and supporting and Sustainable Dubuque and supporting Pollinator Week activities. The photo on the right is actually a collage from those activities where we hired 3 local artists who painted this portable mural, and then we had this on display down in the Bee Branch Greenway, and people came and posed as their own sort of celebrating their own pollinator selves and pollinator awareness. We also held 3 Creative Cafes events in 2022, which engaged 79 individual creatives in networking and engagement activities. We subgranted out $8,400 to empower BIPOC creativity and culture through funding that we had received from the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And then I included this last highlight from 2022 as a shout out to the great work that our intern Mike Williams does. His focus is really on our social media engagement related to arts and culture. And he, in 2022, from the previous year, increased our Facebook reach by 23.9% and our Instagram reach by over 270%. So just a kudos to Mike for the great work that he's been doing engaging the community on social media. One of our primary programs when it comes to arts and culture is that operating support program, which I mentioned. The priorities of that program are about supporting the goals and priorities of the City Council and also the Arts and Culture Master Plan, while promoting artistic excellence and cultural leadership by organizations in the community. We hope that that funding will cultivate social and cultural vibrancy, livability, and community cohesion. So there's also pieces of that that relate to the Imagine Dubuque plan, and we are a champion and report in on that plan related to arts and cultural work. And then we also see that the operating support program is about infusing diverse, equitable, and inclusive practices into programming and operations of our local arts and culture agencies. So this slide here shows just we've had funding for the operating support program since 2006, but I'm just going back to FY17 in this slide just to show some of the growth that we've had. One, that in FY17 we were funding 15 organizations, and we've grown to, in this last year, funding 19 organizations. So, you know, we feel that that program is doing what it's meant to do and growing the health and vibrancy of that sector. And looking into 2024, we anticipate that we'll have at least 21 organizations applying for that funding as Voices Productions opens their Voices Studios and kind of comes back online with their activities, and also as the Dubuque Area Arts Collective, which some of you may have seen in the news, is now in partnership with Smokestack and going to be running that facility for programming and exhibitions there. So we're continuing to see on this, the orange dots and lines are what is being requested cumulatively by those organizations based on the parameters of that program. And then that blue line and the dots is what we're able to fund based on the program budget, which is $250,000 in our operating budget. We also continue to administer the Special Projects Grants Program, which is an investment of $35,000 every year. Since 2005, when this program started, we are happy to celebrate and report that we have funded over 106 projects to date in the community that may not have happened otherwise through this funding. In FY23, we distributed $34,600 to 8 projects. And those projects, that program always requires a match from those organizations. So again, sort of like economic development's overall work of leveraging those public-private partnerships through the special projects in our own little small way, we're inviting that private investment into those projects. And this past year alone had over $130,000 in in-kind and cash resources that were invested in those projects. And just a fun slide to show all of the organizations that we have been able to support through the operating support and special projects over the years. There are 37 organizations represented in this slide. And I just think an exciting slide, and each one of those logos up there represents to me, you know, one or two or a smattering of, you know, a dozen people at these organizations that really make the work happen and engage and inspire our community. Another big piece of our work is continuing to implement the city's Arts and Culture Master Plan, which was adopted in 2016. Within that plan, there are 76 different recommendations, and those are all focused around the ideas of public art and infrastructure, accessibility, equity, and inclusion, the creative economy, artists and entrepreneurship, capacity and investment, and branding and communications. And there's dozens of volunteers along with the commission that are engaged in just, and those organizations that I mentioned who are pushing those recommendations and strategies forward and doing this work in our community. Some of the partnerships and initiatives of the last year that are very specific to our office related to the master plan that I just wanted to highlight. One is that Creatives Cafe piece, which is around that idea of the accessibility, equity, and inclusion. There's a steering committee that I work with in the community to put those on, to network with local creatives with a very specific focus on engaging artists of color and underrepresented artists in that network. The communications campaign that we were thankfully granted funding from both the Iowa Arts Council and Travel Iowa that we've been working on. Here's sort of a sneak peek on the left of what that branding campaign is looking like with the alltogetherdubuque.com logo and website that is continues to be in development but will be launching soon. We're currently participating in the Arts and Economic Prosperity Study 6 through Americans for the Arts, and those results will be released in September, October of this year, so you'll be seeing more on that. And then, like Wally was mentioning, with the Achieve It software. The Arts and Culture Master Plan is one of those plans that's being embedded and funneled into that Achieve It software. So over time, you'll see connections of that plan to those other plans and reporting on that through the Achieve It software. And back to Joe.
Now, after the fun stuff, back to the numbers. This is a listing of our contracted service agreements. Again, that I mentioned, these are organizations that do the work that they do very well. It's work that we want to accomplish in the community, so we contract with them to do what they do best. The only one that's increased this year is Travel Dubuque, and that is because it's based on actual revenue from hotel motel tax. We've got 5 improvement packages we'd like to recommend. The first one is related to Dubuque Main Street. For a number of years, they've been applying for an arts operating grant that comes out of Jenny's office. We've had a discussion, Jenny and I have, we've had that conversation with the leadership over at Dubuque Main Street. We don't think it's a good fit, but we do want them to administer the cultural and entertainment district programming that happens from the state designation, and that's kind of why they were applying for that grant. So we're suggesting that we pull this into our operating budget and add this amount. They've requested $8,500 because that's equal to what they've averaged as far as a grant award from the arts operating support grant. We're suggesting about $4,500, which is a 5% increase to their current contract. Second improvement package is for Dubuque Dream Center. The request is to sponsor 20 of their students. The request was for $100,000 total. They currently have a contracted service agreement for $60,000. We've also, in recent history, provided a $15,000 planning grant for the infrastructure improvements they did over their facility, as well as a $276,000 worth of support to fill in the gap when they purchased Fulton School. So we're recommending $3,000 at this time to provide something. Similar with Fountain of Youth, they're requesting a jump in their contracted service agreement of $40,000 on top of the current $60,000. We're recommending $3,000. The next improvement package is for the Creatives Cafe. You heard Jenny just explain what that program is, how it provides networking for upwards of 70,000, oh my gosh, I wish. 70 arts and culture sector participants, residents who want to network, come together and be creative. That was funded through a GARE grant, and that grant wraps up at the end of June. We really want to continue that programming, so we're recommending a $3,000 improvement package for that. The last one is for a laptop for our confidential account clerk. We all got sent home in March of 2020. Did some patchwork technology usage, did what we could, and but we really need a technology setup for her to work remotely, because that is working very well. So that's a request of non-recurring $3,200. A listing of our CIPs. The first line item is that $10,000 a unit grant that we do for creation of new apartments for rehab projects. That $500,000, I will very quickly put that out the door if that stays in place. We've already had conversations with developers that makes me think that that's going to get spent very quickly. Workforce development supports the work that we do with Greater Dubuque Development. Downtown rehab grants, that's our facade grants and the accompanying planning grants that go with it. Central Avenue Corridor Streetscape Master Plan is now adopted, and this year's $225,000 is to implement some of the suggestions in there. You'll see a 0 for the Crossroads area. You'll remember that's 156 acres that the city purchased a couple of years ago and made it part of the industrial center TIF district. We've gone back and forth. The Crossroads area and the McFadden area are both in the same TIF district, so they both pull money out of the same bucket to do work that needs to happen in those areas. We believe that work in the McFadden area is more likely in the coming year, and so we're putting our focus there from a funding perspective in the coming fiscal year. That's the last one listed here. Back up to the top of this page, green space in the historic Millwork District. That was always envisioned in the original master plan from a dozen years ago. The results aren't totally in for the plan update, but all indications lead us to believe that that's going to be a recommendation in that update as well. So we want to make sure that we have some funding to make that happen. Central Avenue Housing Forgivable Loan, again, that's $10,000 per unit, but it's provided as a forgivable loan versus as a grant. That was started as a pilot program that has been used on a project that was just completed, so we've got some of that money out the door. We want to leave the program in place. And then we have $50,000 for the low-income small business grant. You saw the participants earlier on one of those slides. That is funded with CDBG dollars. The goals we believe we have on track are leveraging that private investment, increasing property values, increasing the number of participants graduating from Opportunity Dubuque Workforce Development Program, and increasing the number of housing units, which is very important, we all know. Where we think we always want to keep improving is through the number of jobs that we create, including the number of jobs that are applying to the high quality jobs program at the state level, and the number of projects that are assisted with our rehab grants downtown. I'll let Jenny speak to her particular goals.
So arts and culture has its own set of performance measures that we track every year. So the ones that we see being on track in terms of our benchmarks are include the percentage of grantee locations or their primary service delivery locations that are within CDBG target areas. CDBG is not a requirement for either operating support or special projects, but when we look at where their activities are happening, about 75% of that work is happening in those low and moderate income areas of our community. Again, back to the special projects program, we look to see that that program is leveraging private support with those matches. Based on the program parameters, we really only need $35,000 in match, that one-to-one match for those projects. But in FY23, we are seeing about just over 166,000 in match in that special projects program. We also look in terms of the reporting from organizations. We ask about how many people they are hiring or contracting, artists that they're working with and paying in their activities that we do, and we're pleased that they are on track for continued increases in the people that they're bringing on and paying through their operating budgets. Some of those places where we're looking to continue improving our work is on the level of grant requests that we're able to meet. So kind of back to that orange and blue slide that I was showing, we're meeting about 89% of the grant requests that are coming in for arts and cultural activities. The number of successful grant applications, this one actually should probably more be in the goals on track, because in FY23 we were able to double from the previous year thanks to that NEA funding and the GARE regranting money that we had 62 successful applications from arts and culture organizations and for arts and culture activities that we're able to fund. And then continuing to want to have more and more successful applicants, or just a number of applications coming in for city-issued arts calls, so that we're recruiting and drawing artists to our community to do work. And so we had, in this last year, 80 applications that we received and offered out through various activities that we're doing, 30 contracts that were awarded, everything from $250 things up to, our bigger ones being for the Art on the River stipends of $1,800. So that's it.
And now we got Michael Williams in this photo with us. And that's all we have. So we're ready for any questions you may have.
Did he Photoshop himself into that
My
picture?
friend Photoshopped
Very
him in.
nice, yes, yeah, very nice, I like
The
it.
floating head. We did what we could.
Okay, well, we are in a public hearing to discuss the Economic Development Department fiscal year 2024 budget. Do we have any public input? I see none here. Do we have any electronic? Okay.
And no input received.
All right, so no virtual input either. Back to the table. Do we see Jill enough? Did she answer all these questions that we always have? You might have. My goodness. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I guess we hear some challenging news at times. I mean, we had Mr. Dickinson here last night talking to us about some of the good news, but also the challenges ahead. I mean, we're looking ahead. We see a little bit of a shaky footing. You mentioned workforce is declining. You mentioned that we've all seen the possibility of things like the R word, recession coming. Things like that we're looking at. I'm just curious from an economic development standpoint, in your perspective and where you sit. I asked the same question of the Housing and Community Development Department. Are we moving in the right direction? Is there anything else that we can be looking at, we can be doing, places we need to put our focus from a policy standpoint to try and improve our footing as we look ahead on this potentially shaky ground?
I think the city is doing so many good things. We're looking at all of the federal dollars that we would be eligible for to be able to create the infrastructure that we need, the workforce that we need. So I think we're on track for that. We lobby for, I don't know if lobby is the word, we request support from our elected officials at the state and federal level on legislation that would be helpful to the city. One challenge that we have is related to revenue generation that municipalities may or may not have in the coming years. So that's a challenge, but we're keeping an eye on it. Workforce attraction and retention is very important, and again, I think we need to stay in touch with our state and federal officials on that. There was discussion of it last night, and I wholeheartedly agree with, we have to be a welcoming community. And I think Dubuque is working really hard to be that. We've put ourselves out there to be inclusive, and I feel like we're doing everything we can. And if we're not, I hope somebody will tell me and tell the rest of us in this room that there's something else that we need to be doing to make sure that our young people want to live here. I've got family members who are young adults who live elsewhere, and I think I would be hard pressed to get them to come here for certain reasons. Not because of anything that the municipality is doing. I think we're working really hard, and the reason we touch so many things is because it's that workforce development. Job creation always seems like the easy button. Businesses are looking for new opportunities. We're a great place to come and to grow jobs. So everything else that we focus on is focusing on getting the people here and keeping them here. So I just really enjoy being involved in so many different things. I sat down maybe 2 weeks after I got this position. A business person in town said, hey, can we go grab a coffee? I want to, just understand what you do. And I started explaining like these 18 things. And he said, what? That's economic development? I'm like, yeah, housing, this, that, and the other. I mean, it blew his mind. He had no idea kind of all the facets, but that's what keeps me intrigued and motivated every day.
Well, and I think it's a theme that we see, all the things tying together in these departments that we're talking about and the budgets that we're talking about and some of these major goals that we set as a council, but then we all carry forward together. So I think your idea of workforce retention and the focus on that is definitely, or attraction and retention, I think is definitely a key aspect to all this. So thanks for the answer. And Jenny, thank you very much for your presentation. Nice to see you 2 nights in a row. Yep. Well, with all that, we appreciate the presentation. I think we're done with business here for the evening, so we will stand adjourned.